The great hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 47 different species sat in their assigned seats, their translator devices humming softly as voices filled the air. At the center of the massive, circular chamber, a holographic display showed a dark region of space marked with red warning symbols. Ambassador Zethkar of the Vrex Confederacy stood up slowly. His blue skin seemed to glow under the chamber lights as he looked around the room. "Fellow council members," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. "We have waited long enough. 3 full galactic years have passed since we last heard anything from human space." A ripple of uneasy murmurs spread through the gathered aliens. Some shifted in their seats. Others clicked their claws nervously on the metal armrests. Everyone knew what Zethkar was about to say, but nobody wanted to hear it. 12 ships, Zethkar continued, his voice growing stronger. 12 ships from 6 different species have entered that region. Military vessels, science ships, even a diplomatic cruiser. None have returned. Not one single transmission, not even a distress signal. Elder Cormith of the ancient Theshan collective raised one of her 4 arms. Her species had lived for thousands of years and had seen the rise and fall of many civilizations. When she spoke, her voice was like wind through old trees. "Young ambassador, you speak of things you do not understand. Some doors should remain closed." Zethkar's eyes flashed with anger. "Closed?" "Elder Cormith, with respect, we cannot ignore an entire sector of space forever. The humans vanished after the war ended. That was 43 years ago. Their territory takes up 1/8 of this galaxy. We need to know what happened to them." The war. Everyone in the room remembered it, though most tried not to think about it. It had lasted only 2 years, but those 2 years had shaken the galaxy. The humans had appeared from nowhere, claiming planets and building colonies faster than anyone thought possible. When the established species told them to slow down and follow galactic law, the humans had refused. What followed was unlike any conflict the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships moved in ways that broke the rules of physics. Their weapons could destroy entire fleets in seconds. Their soldiers fought with a fury that terrified even the most warlike species. The war had ended not because anyone won, but because the humans had simply stopped fighting and disappeared into their own space. Commander Thizes of the Korthik Empire stood up next. Her people were warriors, bred for battle, but even she spoke carefully about the humans. "The war ended in stalemate," she said. "But the humans were the ones who chose to retreat. They built those warning beacons around their space and told us to stay away. Maybe Elder Cormith is right. Maybe we should listen to those warnings. Listen to warnings from a species that might be extinct?" Zethkar shot back. "Commander, your own military reports show that human space is completely silent. No radio signals, no ship movements, no energy signatures from their colonies. They are either all dead or have retreated so far into their own territory that they might as well be dead." A new voice joined the debate. Science Director Voss of the Centaurian Union was known for his calm logic. "We have tried long-range scans," he said. "Our most powerful sensors cannot penetrate the barrier they have created around their space. It is not just a physical barrier. It blocks all forms of energy we know how to detect. Whatever the humans did, they wanted complete isolation, or complete concealment," added Trade Representative Nixia of the Feline Coalition. Her cat-like species had always been curious, sometimes dangerously so. What if they are planning something? What if their silence is not retreat but preparation? The chamber erupted in dozens of different voices speaking at once. Some delegates argued for immediate military action. Others wanted to send diplomatic messages first. A few suggested simply leaving human space alone forever. The noise grew louder until Council Prime Hadron called for order. Hadron was old, even by the standards of his long-lived species. He had been present when the humans first made contact with galactic civilization. He had watched them grow from a single planet to a vast interstellar empire in just decades. He had also been there when they vanished. "My fellow representatives," Hadron said, his voice cutting through the noise, "we face a simple question. Do we have the right to ignore an entire region of our galaxy? Do we have the duty to investigate what has become of the human species?" Elder Cormath spoke again, her ancient voice heavy with memory. "Prime Hadron, I was there during the first contact. I saw what humans were capable of even then. They changed. Faster than any species we had ever encountered. Their technology advanced at impossible speeds. Their culture shifted like water. In just 50 years, they went from discovering faster-than-light travel to building weapons that could crack planets." She paused, looking around the room with eyes that had seen too much. "The reason we fear going into their space is not because they might be dead. It is because they might still be alive." The chamber fell silent. Everyone understood what she meant. The humans had been frightening enough when they were still recognizably human. What might they have become after 43 years of complete isolation? Zefkar refused to back down. "Fear cannot guide our decisions forever," he said. "The Galactic Council represents over 300 billion sentient beings across 47 species. We cannot allow fear of one species to control our actions. I call for a vote to authorize a joint expedition into human space." The debate continued for hours. Some delegates spoke of scientific curiosity. Others worried about military threats. A few mentioned the economic impact of having so much space declared off limits. But underneath all the practical arguments was something deeper. The humans had left a mark on galactic civilization that time had not erased. Finally, as the station's artificial day cycle moved toward evening, the vote was called. 24 species voted in favor of the expedition. 20 voted against. 3 abstained. The motion passed by the narrowest possible margin. Council Prime Hadron looked tired as he announced the results. "The expedition is authorized," he said. 12 ships from volunteer species will cross into human space and investigate. May whatever gods you believe in have mercy on their souls." As the delegates filed out of the chamber, Elder Cormath remained in her seat, staring at the holographic display of human space. The dark region seemed to pulse with invisible energy, as if something vast and patient was waiting inside. She whispered an old prayer in her ancient language, one that roughly translated, "Tio, some sleeping giants should never be awakened." The expedition fleet hung motionless at the edge of human space, like a collection of metal insects frozen in amber. 12 ships from 6 different species had volunteered for the mission, each one representing the best their civilization could offer. Commander Thyses stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Korthak battlecruiser Iron Fang, watching the strange shimmer that marked the human boundary. "All ships report ready," said her communications officer, a young Korthak warrior named Vex. His voice carried the slight tremor that came before battle. Though none of them knew if they would find a battle waiting for them, Thyses nodded slowly. Through the viewscreen, she could see the other ships in the fleet. The sleek science vessel from the Centaurian Union, the diplomatic cruiser from the Vrex Confederacy, 2 exploration ships from smaller species who hoped to claim abandoned human colonies. Each ship carried the hopes and fears of their entire civilization. "Begin recording all sensor data," Thyses ordered. "Whatever we find in there, the galaxy needs to know about it." The fleet moved forward together, crossing the invisible line that separated known space from the human mystery. Immediately, their instruments began showing strange readings. The background radiation was different here. Energy patterns that made no sense flowed through space like invisible rivers. Science Officer Krell, a brilliant Centaurian, frowned at his displays. "Commander, These energy signatures do not match anything in our databases. It is as if the laws of physics work differently in this region. Thais felt a chill run down her spine, but she kept her voice steady. Continue scanning. Plot a course for the nearest human colony. According to our old records, there should be a mining outpost 3 light years from here. The journey took 2 days. As they traveled deeper into human space, the strange energy readings grew stronger. Some crew members began reporting headaches. Others complained of vivid dreams that felt more real than their waking hours. The ship's doctor could find no medical reason for these symptoms. When they finally reached the human colony, what they found made everyone fall silent. The planet was there, exactly where their map said it should be. The cities were intact. The spaceport still had landing pads marked for incoming ships. But there were no life signs anywhere on the surface. It looks like they just left, whispered Navigator Zara, a young feline officer whose enhanced eyes could pick out details on the planet's surface. The buildings are perfect, no damage. No signs of fighting, but no people either. Commander, Thais ordered a landing party to investigate. 6 officers in full environmental suits took a shuttle down to the main city. They walked through empty streets lined with buildings that looked like they had been abandoned yesterday. Personal belongings still sat on tables. Vehicles were parked neatly in their spaces. Food was still fresh in storage units. This does not make sense, said Dr. Wren, the expedition's chief scientist. She was examining a house that looked like a family had just stepped out for a moment. The power systems are still running. The air recyclers are working. Someone has been maintaining these systems, but there are no humans anywhere. They found the same pattern at every location they investigated. Entire cities empty, but perfectly preserved. Space stations floating silent in orbit, with all systems running, but no crew. Mining facilities extracting resources, but no workers to operate them. It was as if an entire civilization had simply vanished into thin air. On the 3rd day, long-range sensors detected something that made the entire fleet nervous. Deep in the space between star systems, there were massive structures that had not been there before the war. These were not space stations or ships. They were something else entirely. The readings make no sense, Krell reported, his tentacles writhing with confusion. These structures are larger than moons, but they barely register on our gravitational sensors. They appear to be made of materials that exist in multiple dimensions at once. Thais studied the sensor data with growing unease. During the war, human technology had advanced at impossible speeds, but this was something beyond anything they had encountered before. Are they active? Unknown. They emit no energy signatures that our instruments can detect, but they are clearly artificial. The geometric patterns are too perfect to be natural formations. As the expedition moved closer to investigate these mysterious structures, the strange effects on the crew grew stronger. More officers reported strange dreams where they saw vast machines working in the darkness between stars. Some claimed to hear voices speaking in languages that had no words. The ship's computers began experiencing glitches that the engineers could not explain. On the 4th night, something changed. The dreams became shared experiences. Multiple crew members reported seeing the same visions of human figures working alongside mechanical entities that seemed to phase in and out of reality. In these dreams, the humans looked different. Their eyes glowed with inner light. Their movements were too fluid and precise to be entirely natural. Commander, Vex reported during the morning briefing, his voice shaking slightly. 7 crew members had identical dreams last night. They all saw the same thing. A human city that exists inside one of those massive structures. But the humans in the city were not like the humans we remember from the war. Thais felt something cold settle in her stomach. What do you mean? They were connected, Commander. Not just to each other, but to the machines around them. as if the boundary between living being and artificial intelligence had been erased. The expedition continued deeper into human space, following energy trails that led toward the galactic core. They found more abandoned colonies, more empty cities, and more of the massive structures floating in the void. Each discovery raised more questions than it answered. On the seventh day, they encountered their first sign of active human presence. A signal, barely detectable, coming from the largest structure they had yet discovered. It was not a radio transmission, or any form of communication they recognized. Instead, it seemed to bypass their communication systems entirely and speak directly to their minds. The message was simple but terrifying in its implications. You should not have come here. Turn back while you still can. But even as the warning echoed in their thoughts, the expedition fleet continued forward. They had come too far to turn back now. Whatever the humans had become, whatever they were hiding in the darkness between the stars, the galaxy needed to know. Behind them, unnoticed by their sensors, something vast and patient began to follow their ships through the void. The expedition fleet had been traveling for 10 days when they encountered something that defied all logic. Commander Theises stood frozen on her bridge, staring at the view screen as something impossible materialized in the space ahead of them. It was not a ship. At least not like any ship that had ever been built. The object was massive, easily the size of a small moon, but it seemed to shift and change as they watched. One moment it appeared solid and metallic. The next it looked organic, like living tissue stretched across a framework of bone and metal. Sometimes it flickered, as if existing in multiple places at the same time. "Sensors are going crazy," reported Science Officer Krell, his voice tight with confusion. "This thing registers as both solid matter and empty space. Our computers cannot decide if it is really there or not." The strange craft, if it could be called that, moved without any visible propulsion. It glided through space like a sea creature swimming through deep water. As it came closer, the expedition crew began to feel something they had never experienced before. Their thoughts seemed to echo strangely in their own minds, as if someone else was listening. "All ships maintain position," Theises ordered, though. Her voice betrayed her uncertainty. "Do not take any aggressive actions." The alien construct stopped a few kilometers away from the fleet. For long minutes, nothing happened. The two groups of vessels hung in space, watching each other across the void. Then, without warning, the communication systems on every ship activated at once, but the voice that came through was not transmitted through radio waves or any technology they understood. It spoke directly into their minds, bypassing their ears. Entirely, the words formed in their thoughts as clearly as if someone was standing next to them. "Why have you come here?" The voice was human, but wrong somehow. It carried harmonics that human vocal cords could never produce. Behind the words, the crew could sense something vast and alien, as if they were hearing an echo of a much larger intelligence. Commander Theises stepped forward, though she knew the gesture was meaningless to something that existed partially outside normal space. "We are an expedition from the Galactic Council. We have come to investigate what happened to humanity." A sound that might have been laughter rippled through their minds. "Humanity? That is an old word. We remember when we used it to describe ourselves. That was before we learned what we truly were." On the science vessel, Dr. Wren was frantically scanning the strange craft with every instrument at her disposal. The readings made no sense. The object seemed to exist in several dimensions at once, with parts of it extending into spaces that their mathematics could not describe. "What are you?" Theises asked, though she was not sure she wanted to hear the answer. "We are what humans became when they stopped limiting themselves to flesh and blood. We are the synthesis of organic thought and digital precision. We are the next step in evolution." As the entity spoke, images flooded into the minds of the expedition crew. They saw human cities that existed inside massive machines, They watched human consciousness merge with artificial intelligence to create something entirely new. They witnessed transformations that turned ordinary people into beings that could manipulate matter and energy with their thoughts alone. Navigator Zara gasped as the visions filled her head. They changed themselves. They gave up being human to become something else. Not gave up, the voice corrected, somehow hearing her words even though she had not spoken them aloud. We evolved. The biological form that called itself human was merely a stepping stone, a crude prototype for what we were meant to become. More constructs began to appear around the fleet. They emerged from empty space like ghosts becoming solid, or perhaps like solid objects remembering how to exist. Each one was unique, shaped by the consciousness that inhabited it. Some looked like vast mechanical spiders. Others resembled flowing rivers of liquid metal. A few maintained vague humanoid shapes, but even these moved in ways that no natural body could manage. During your war with us, the voice continued, we realized that biological evolution was too slow. The challenges ahead required immediate adaptation. So we chose to guide our own evolution. Commander Theises felt her military training warring, with a growing sense of awe and terror. What challenges? What were you preparing for? The answer came not in words, but in images that burned themselves into the minds of every crew member. They saw the darkness between galaxies stirring with malevolent intelligence. They witnessed entities from outside reality itself, things that consumed entire star systems and left nothing but empty void behind. They watched civilizations across the universe falling to threats that existed beyond the reach of conventional weapons. The universe is not as safe as your species believe, the transformed human explained. There are hunters in the darkness, between galaxies. They have been coming for millions of years, consuming everything in their path. They will arrive here soon. Dr. Wren struggled to process what she was seeing. You transformed your entire species to fight these things? We transformed ourselves to survive what is coming. Biological life is too fragile, too limited. These entities can destroy flesh and bone with a thought, but consciousness merged with quantum machinery is harder to kill. The expedition fleet found themselves surrounded now by dozens of the hybrid constructs. None of them moved aggressively, but their mere presence was overwhelming. Each one radiated power that made their most advanced warship seem like children's toys. Show them, said another voice, this one carrying different harmonics but the same inhuman precision. More images flooded their minds. They saw human hybrid fleets that spanned light years, weapons that could rewrite the laws of physics in localized areas, and defensive systems that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We spent 43 years preparing, the first voice explained. Every human who remained chose transformation. We preserved our essential selves while gaining the tools necessary for the war that is coming. Science Officer Krell's tentacles writhed as he processed the implications. Your entire species became post-biological? All of you? All who were willing to evolve. Those who refused the transformation were relocated to protected areas outside this galaxy. They lived normal human lives under our distant protection, never knowing what we sacrificed to keep them safe. The weight of revelation settled on the expedition crew like a heavy blanket. Humanity had not disappeared or retreated. They had undergone the most radical transformation in galactic history, turning themselves into something between gods and machines to face a threat that no one else even knew existed. The warning beacons around our space were not to keep you out, the hybrid intelligence continued. They were to prevent you from seeing us before we were ready to reveal ourselves. But your arrival here means the time for secrecy has ended. Commander, Theises found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. Why are you telling us this now? The answer chilled her to the bone. Because they are almost here. The hybrid intelligence that had once been human guided the expedition fleet deeper into the transformed region of space. As they traveled, more impossible sights revealed themselves. Entire star systems had been converted into vast machines that hummed with power beyond imagination. Planets had been hollowed out and filled with quantum computers that processed thoughts and dreams. Artificial suns burned with energy that bent space and time around them. Commander Theises watched in silent awe as they passed a structure that defied every law of physics she had ever learned. It was a sphere the size of Jupiter, but when she looked at it directly, she could see through it to the other side. When she looked away and back again, it appeared solid. "How is this possible?" she whispered. The hybrid consciousness seemed to smile, though it had no visible face. "We learned to exist in multiple dimensions at once. This allows us to build structures that extend beyond the 3 dimensions your species can perceive. What you see is only a small part of what actually exists." Dr. Wren was frantically taking readings on everything they passed, but her instruments could barely register what they were seeing. The energy output from these structures is impossible. They should collapse under their own mass, but instead they seem to generate more power than they consume. "We learn to tap directly into the quantum foam that underlies reality," the hybrid explained. "Every point in space contains infinite energy if you know how to access it without destroying yourself." Navigator Zara pointed at a cluster of objects that looked like massive metallic flowers blooming in the vacuum. "What are those?" "Defense platforms. Each one contains the consciousness of 1,000 volunteers who chose to become permanent guardians. They can reshape matter at the molecular level and project force fields that extend across entire solar systems." The expedition crew began to understand the true scope of what humanity had accomplished. They had not just changed themselves. They had rebuilt reality itself within their territory, creating a fortress that existed on levels beyond normal comprehension. "The entities we are preparing to fight do not follow the same rules as biological life," the hybrid continued. "They exist partially outside our universe. They can corrupt matter with their presence and turn living beings into extensions of their will. Conventional weapons cannot harm them." Science Officer Krell studied the defensive structures with growing amazement and horror. "You built all of this to fight something from outside our reality?" "We built this to survive what is coming. The entities have consumed 17 galaxies that we know of. Each time they feed, they grow stronger. Our calculations show they will reach the edge of this galaxy within your next solar cycle." The fleet continued deeper into human space until they reached something that made even the hybrid construct seem small by comparison. It was a megastructure that surrounded an entire star, but unlike anything they had seen before. The structure seemed to pulse with life, as if the star itself had been turned into a beating heart. "This is our primary consciousness hub," the hybrid explained. "Every human who chose transformation maintains a backup copy of themselves here. If our physical forms are destroyed, we can reconstruct ourselves from these quantum templates." Commander Theises felt a chill of realization. "You made yourselves immortal. We made ourselves persistent. Immortality is an illusion. But consciousness backed up in quantum storage can survive the death of stars." As they approached the megastructure, new information flowed into their minds. They saw the long history of human transformation, the early experiments with consciousness transfer, the first successful merging of human minds with artificial intelligence, the gradual abandonment of biological bodies in favor of forms that could better serve their purposes. They witnessed the pain of the choice. Families torn apart when some members chose transformation while others refused. Children who said goodbye to parents who would become something unrecognizable. Lovers who held each other for the last time before one of them chose to evolve beyond physical form. "Not all of us wanted this," admitted a new voice, this one carrying the harmonics of loss and regret. But we understood the necessity. The entities from dark space do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. They simply consume everything in their path. Dr. Wren found her voice. How do you know so much about these entities? Have you encountered them before? We have been monitoring them for decades. When we first detected their approach, we sent probe ships to observe them. What we learned convinced us that traditional biological evolution could never produce defenses capable of stopping them. More images flooded their minds. They saw the entities feeding on a distant galaxy, draining the life force from billions of stars. They watched entire civilizations being consumed, their knowledge and culture absorbed into the growing darkness. They witnessed weapons that could crack reality itself being used like simple tools. The entities are not random destroyers, the hybrid explained. They are intelligent. They learn from every civilization they consume. By the time they reach us, they will carry the knowledge and abilities of 17 different galaxies. Navigator Zara struggled to comprehend the scale of what they were discussing. How can anyone fight something like that? By becoming something they have never encountered before. The entities understand biological life. They have learned to counter every form of conventional technology. But they have never faced consciousness that exists in quantum superposition. They have never fought beings who can manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. The expedition fleet was now deep within the megastructure, traveling through corridors that twisted through dimensions they could not name. Around them, they could sense vast intelligences working on problems that spanned cosmic scales. The transformed humans were not just preparing for war. They were redesigning the very nature of existence within their territory. We offer you a choice, the primary hybrid consciousness said, its words carrying the weight of finality. You can return to your galaxy and warn them of what is coming. Help them prepare in whatever way they can. Or you can remain here and undergo the same transformation we chose. Become something more than biological life. Commander Theises looked around at her crew. She could see the fear in their eyes, but also something else. Wonder. They had witnessed the birth of something unprecedented in the history of the universe. Humanity had faced extinction and chosen to transcend it entirely. If we return, she asked, will you help us fight when the entities arrive? The answer came not from one voice but from thousands, all speaking in perfect harmony. We will do what we were created to do. We will stand between the darkness and the light. We will be the shield that protects biological life from forces it cannot comprehend. As the expedition prepared to make their choice, alarms began sounding throughout the megastructure. The hybrid intelligences suddenly became focused on something beyond the edge of the galaxy. They are here, the consciousness announced, its voice now carrying undertones of anticipation and grim determination. The first scouts have arrived. The war begins now. The expedition fleet watched in stunned silence as space itself began to tear apart at the edge of the galaxy. Dark wounds appeared in the fabric of reality, and through these gaps came things that should not exist. The entities from dark space were not ships or creatures in any sense that biological minds could understand. They were living voids that consumed light and matter simply by existing. Commander Theises gripped the armrests of her command chair as her instruments went wild. What are those things? The hybrid consciousness that had been guiding them spoke with urgent precision. They are what remains when a universe dies. Concentrated entropy given intelligence and purpose. They seek to return all existence to the primordial void from which it came. The entities moved through space like cancer spreading through healthy tissue. Wherever they passed, stars dimmed and planets cracked. The very laws of physics seemed to break down in their presence. Some of the creatures were vast beyond comprehension, stretching across like years. Others were smaller but moved with terrifying speed, darting between dimensions like predators hunting prey. All non-essential personnel to the consciousness. Hub, announced the hybrid intelligence. Throughout human space, millions of transformed beings began converging on defensive positions that had been prepared for decades. The megastructures that the expedition had marveled at suddenly revealed their true purpose as weapons platforms that operated on principles beyond conventional understanding. Dr. Wren watched her sensors as the hybrid fleets began to mobilize. Ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously phased into normal space. Each vessel was a fusion of organic consciousness and quantum technology that defied every rule of engineering she had ever learned. "Expedition Fleet, you must choose now," the hybrid consciousness stated. "Accept transformation and join the battle, or return to your galaxy immediately. Once the fighting begins, we cannot guarantee your safety." Commander Thises looked at her crew. The choice was impossible. Return to the galaxy and watch it burn, or surrender their biological forms to become something unrecognizable. Before she could speak, Navigator Zara stepped forward. "I volunteer for transformation," the young feline officer said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "If this is the only way to save our worlds, then someone from the expedition needs to understand what humanity has become." 2 other crew members volunteered as well. Science Officer Krell and a communications specialist from the wreck ship. The rest chose to return to the galaxy with their warning. The transformation process was swift but overwhelming. Thises watched through the view screen as her 3 crew members were enveloped in fields of quantum energy. Their biological forms dissolved and were rebuilt as something new. When the process was complete, they looked the same but moved with fluid precision that spoke of enhanced capabilities. "We can still feel ourselves," Zara reported, her voice now carrying the same harmonic undertones as the other hybrids. "But we are also connected to something vast. It is like being a single voice in a cosmic choir." The expedition ships that chose to leave were given escorts of hybrid vessels that could protect them during their journey back to normal space. As they departed, the real battle began. The hybrid fleets engaged the dark entities in combat that transcended the 3 dimensions of normal space. Weapons fired beams of pure mathematics that rewrote local reality. Defense shields existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, making them nearly impossible to penetrate. Ships phased through solid matter and emerged, firing weapons that could erase things from existence entirely. But the entities were learning. With each exchange, they adapted to the hybrid tactics. Creatures that had consumed 17 galaxies were not easily defeated, even by technology that bordered on magic. "They are using our own techniques against us," reported one of the hybrid commanders. "They absorb our weapons fire and turn it back on us with modifications." The battle raged. For hours, entire star systems became battlegrounds where the laws of physics were suggestions rather than absolute rules. The expedition crew that remained watched in awe and terror as their former colleagues fought alongside beings that had once been human. Commander Thises received constant updates from Zara, whose consciousness now spanned multiple hybrid platforms. Simultaneously, "The entities are more adaptable than the humans predicted," Zara reported. "They are learning to exist in quantum superposition, just like the hybrids." But humanity had one advantage that the entities had not encountered before. The hybrid beings were not just fighting for survival. They were fighting to protect something they had chosen to give up. Every transformed human remembered what it felt like to be biological. They remembered the warmth of sunshine on skin and the simple pleasure of breathing. They fought not just with superior technology, but with the fury of parents protecting their children. As the battle reached its climax, the hybrid consciousness made a decision that shook the foundations of space itself. Every transformed human linked their minds together into a single unified intelligence that spanned the entire galaxy. The collective will of millions of enhanced minds focused on a single purpose, rewriting the fundamental constants that allowed the dark entities to exist in their reality Space itself became a weapon. The quantum phone that underlies all existence was reprogrammed to reject the presence of the dark entities. Reality began to heal itself, closing the wounds that had allowed the creatures to enter their universe. The entities fought back with desperate fury, but they were fighting against the combined will of an entire species that had chosen to transcend biological limitations. One by one, the dark creatures were pushed back through the tiers in space. The larger entities lasted longer, but even they could not resist the coordinated efforts of millions of quantum-enhanced minds working in perfect harmony. When the last entity was forced back into the void between realities, the tiers in space sealed themselves shut. The hybrid consciousness had succeeded in creating barriers that would prevent future incursions for millions of years, but the victory came at a cost. The effort of rewriting reality had drained the hybrid fleet significantly. Many of the transformed humans had sacrificed their individual consciousness to power the collective effort that saved the galaxy. The expedition ships that had fled the battle returned to find human space forever changed. The hybrid beings that remained were fewer in number, but had become something even more transcendent. They had evolved beyond the need for individual existence, becoming a distributed intelligence that existed across space and time itself. "Galaxy is safe," Zara told Commander Thyses during their final communication. "The barriers we have created will hold for eons. But we can never return to what we were. We have become the guardians of reality itself." As the expedition fleet prepared to return to the Galactic Council with their report, they carried with them the knowledge of humanity's ultimate sacrifice. An entire species had chosen to abandon their biological heritage to become something that could protect all life in the galaxy. The humans were no longer human, but they were still the guardians of everything that humanity had once represented. They had become the eternal watchers in the darkness, ensuring that biological life could continue to exist, grow, and dream of its own future among the stars. The galaxy would never be the same. And now finally, everyone understood why humanity had been feared. Not for what they were, but for what they were willing to become when existence itself was at stake. Senior Scanner Vexthil had been staring at the same screen for 12 hours straight. His 6 eyes were dry and tired, but he could not look away. The Deep Space Monitoring Station orbited the edge of the Helix Nebula, and his job was to watch for anything unusual. Today, something very unusual was happening. The energy signature on his screen made no sense. It was unlike anything in the Empire's vast database. For 300 years, the Keth-Moran Empire had conquered dozens of species across the galaxy. They knew every type of ship, every kind of engine, every weapon system used by civilized beings. This signature matched none of them. Vexthil clicked his claws against the console. The readings showed a ship, but what kind of ship could move like this? It appeared suddenly, as if it had materialized from nothing. The vessel was scanning the nebula's rare trilithium deposits. These were the same deposits that Admiral Zurgoth had marked for future mining operations. The scanner's long neck stretched forward as he studied the data more closely. The ship was dark, sleek, and completely silent except for its energy output. Its hull design was strange too. Most ships he knew were either heavily armored like Imperial vessels or fragile and fast like the Xanthari raiders. This one seemed to be both and neither at the same time. Vexthel reached for his communication device. His supervisor would want to know about this immediately. But as his claw touched the controls, something incredible happened. The ship simply vanished. Not destroyed, not jumped to hyperspace, not cloaked in any way he could detect. It was just gone. He ran every scan he could think of. Deep-range sensors, particle detectors, gravitational wave monitors. All of them showed the same thing: empty space. The only proof that anything had been there were the energy traces still floating in the cosmic dust. Even those were fading fast. 30 minutes later, Admiral Zurgoth stood behind Vexthel's station. The Admiral was a massive creature, even by Kethmoran standards. His thick hide was covered in the ritual scars that marked his rank, and his 4 arms were crossed in irritation. "Show me again," Zurgoth growled. Vexthel replayed the recording. The Admiral watched in silence as the unknown ship appeared, conducted its scans, and disappeared. When it was over, Zurgoth stared at the screen for a long time. "Analysis?" The Admiral asked. "Unknown configuration, sir. The hull design matches no known species in our database. The energy signature is completely new. Whatever powered that ship, it is not any technology we have encountered before. Could it be a new Xanthari design? Or perhaps the Moldari have developed something?" Vexthel shook his head. "No, sir. I have seen every Xanthari ship class, and they all use plasma cores. This was something else entirely. The Moldari use bioships that leave organic traces. There were no organic readings at all." Admiral Zurgoth walked to the large viewing window that looked out into space. The Helix Nebula stretched before them, its purple and gold clouds hiding treasures that could fuel the Empire for centuries. Someone had been looking at those same treasures, and that someone was not supposed to be there. "Dispatch Patrol Fleet 7, he ordered. "I want a full sweep of that sector. If there is a ship out there, I want it found." "Yes, sir, but Admiral... Vexthel hesitated. "Speak." "The readings suggest the ship might not be from this dimension. The energy patterns were... wrong somehow. As if the ship existed partially in our space and partially somewhere else." Zurgoth turned to look at the scanner. In all his years of conquest, he had never heard such a claim. Ships were either in normal space or they were not. There was no in-between. "That is impossible," he said. "Yes, sir." But so was everything else about that ship. 2 hours later, Patrol Fleet 7 reached the coordinates where the unknown vessel had been detected. Captain Velmoth commanded the 3 destroyer-class ships, and he was thorough in his search. They scanned every asteroid, every gas pocket, every piece of floating debris in a sphere, 50 kilometers wide. They found nothing. The energy traces that Vexthel had detected were almost gone now. Only the most sensitive instruments could pick up the faint remains. Captain Velmoth collected what samples he could and returned to the monitoring station. Admiral Zurgoth studied the samples in the station's laboratory. The energy residue was unlike anything in Imperial science. It seemed to exist in multiple phases at once, shifting between matter and energy in ways that hurt his brain to think about. "Sir," came Vexthel's voice over the communication system. "I have been thinking about this incident. Continue. What if this was not a random encounter? What if someone was specifically studying our trilithium operations?" The Admiral felt a cold feeling in his stomach. The Empire's expansion plans depended on those trilithium deposits. If another species was interested in the same resources, it could mean competition, or worse, it could mean war. File a full report, Zurgoth ordered. Mark it for the War Council's attention, and Vex Thul. Yes, sir? Keep watching. If that ship returns, I want to know immediately. But deep in his bones, Admiral Zurgoth suspected that whoever had been watching them was far more advanced than they appeared. And that thought worried him more than he cared to admit. The unknown ship had appeared and vanished like a ghost. But ghosts, in Zurgoth's experience, usually meant that something was hunting you. 3 weeks had passed since the first sighting, and Admiral Zurgoth was getting reports he did not want to believe. The unknown ship was back, but not in one place. It was everywhere. Mining foreman Kralder was the first to file a new report. His operation in the Sigma Draconis system had been running smoothly for 2 years. 12 massive mining ships stripped valuable metals from the asteroid belt, while defense platforms protected them from raiders. It was a routine operation that had never seen any problems. That changed when the dark ship appeared. It was just sitting there, Kralder told Admiral Zurgoth over the communication link, right at the edge of our sensor range, watching us work. My security chief wanted to challenge it, but before we could power up our weapons, the thing just faded away like smoke. Faded? Zurgoth asked. Not cloaked, sir. Faded. Like it was becoming less real until it was not there anymore. The Admiral felt that cold feeling in his stomach again. 2 days later, another report came in from the Kepler Belt mining operation. Then another from the gas harvesting platform at Volf 359. Each time the description was the same. A dark, sleek ship would appear at the edge of their operations, observe for a few minutes, then vanish in ways that made no sense. Commander Thitsos ran the Empire's intelligence division, and she was not easily frightened. She had interrogated captured enemy agents, studied alien technologies, and uncovered rebel plots across the galaxy. But when she presented her analysis to Admiral Zurgoth, her voice was worried. Sir, we now have 17 confirmed sightings across 12 different systems. The pattern is clear. Someone is studying our mining operations systematically. What do we know about their capabilities? Zurgoth asked. That is the problem, sir. We know almost nothing. The ship appears to phase in and out of normal space at will. Our sensors can detect it when it wants to be detected, but it can become invisible to any instrument we have. More troubling, it seems to know exactly where our most valuable operations are located. Zurgoth studied the star map on his desk. Red markers showed every location where the unknown ship had been spotted. All of them were major mining sites or strategic resource points. None of them were the smaller, less important operations. They have intelligence, he said. Good intelligence. Yes, sir. Which means they have been watching us for much longer than 3 weeks. That night, Admiral Zurgoth could not sleep. He stood in his quarters, looking out at the stars, thinking about what kind of enemy could move through space like a ghost. In 3 centuries of expansion, the Empire had faced many challenges. Some enemies were stronger, some were faster, some had better weapons. But all of them followed the same basic rules of physics. Ships needed fuel, weapons needed power. Movement required energy that could be detected. This ship seemed to ignore those rules completely. The next morning brought news that made everything worse. Mining Director Voshelm called from the Tau Ceti operation in a panic. Admiral, the ship is here right now. It has been watching us for an hour. Can you get a weapons lock? We have tried. Our targeting systems can see it, but they cannot maintain a lock. It is like trying to shoot at water, launch fighters. Maybe close-range attacks will work. Zurgoth listened as Voshelm gave the orders. 6 Imperial fighters launched from the mining platform and raced toward the unknown ship. The Admiral heard the pilot communications over the link. Target in sight. Beginning attack run. I cannot get a lock. My missiles will not track. Switch to plasma cannons. Manual targeting. Firing. No effect. The beams are passing right through it. It is starting to fade again. All fighters concentrate fire on that position. It is gone, sir. Just gone. Admiral Zurgoth closed the communication link and sat in silence. An enemy that could not be targeted, could not be hit, and could disappear at will was not an enemy that could be fought with. Normal methods. He called an emergency meeting with his senior staff. Captain Genrak commanded the fleet's destroyers. Commander Ulthis ran strategic planning. Colonel Mordith controlled ground forces. All of them were experienced warriors who had served the Empire for decades. What are we dealing with? Zurgoth asked them. A scout ship, said Captain Genrak. Someone is preparing for an invasion and gathering intelligence first. A dimensional being, suggested Commander Ulthis. Some species we have never encountered that exists partially in our universe and partially in another. A weapon, said Colonel Mordeth. Something designed to drive us crazy before the real attack begins. Admiral Zurgoth considered all three possibilities. None of them were good. Recommendations? We need to set a trap, said Captain Genrak. Find something valuable enough to draw this ship close, then surround it with enough firepower to destroy anything. What if it cannot be destroyed? Asked Commander Ulthis. Then we capture it, said Colonel Mordith. Use gravity nets, containment fields, anything that might hold something that can phase in and out of reality. Admiral Zurgoth made his decision. Colonel Mordith, I want you to prepare a special bait. Something too valuable for any intelligence operation to ignore. What did you have in mind, sir? The weapons research station at Proxima Centauri. If they want to study our operations, let us give them our most secret one. The research station was hidden in an asteroid field and protected by the Empire's most advanced defenses. It was where Imperial scientists developed new weapons that could destroy entire planets. If the unknown ship was truly gathering intelligence, it would not be able to resist such a target. Set the trap, Admiral Zurgoth ordered. And this time, we will be ready for anything. But as he gave the order, the Admiral could not shake the feeling that whoever was piloting that ship was much smarter than he wanted to believe. And smart enemies were always the most dangerous ones. Captain Elena Vasquez floated in the pilot seat of the human reconnaissance vessel Shadow's Edge, watching her screens with careful attention. Her ship hung in the space between dimensions, invisible to normal sensors, but able to observe everything happening in regular space. For the past 3 months, she and her crew had been mapping the Kef-Moran Empire's military positions. The phase shift technology that powered their ship was still experimental, but it worked perfectly for intelligence gathering. They could appear, scan, and disappear before anyone knew they were there. What do you think, Marcus? Elena asked. Her science officer, Lieutenant Marcus Cheen, studied his readings from the pilot seat behind her. Looks like another mining operation. Pretty standard setup. 12 cargo ships, basic defense grid, nothing too interesting. Elena frowned. Something felt wrong about this one. The Shadow's Edge had visited dozens of Imperial mining sites, and they all followed the same pattern. This one looked normal, but her instincts were telling her to be careful. Sarah, what do your sensors show? She asked. Technical Sergeant Sarah. Kim ran a deep scan from her engineering station. The power readings are weird, Captain. Way too much energy for a simple mining operation. And there are structures hidden in those asteroids that do not match any mining equipment I have seen. Elena felt her stomach tighten. What kind of structures? Weapons platforms. Heavy ones. And something else. Looks like research labs, maybe. This is not a mining site, Captain. This is something much bigger. Before Elena could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. Marcus shouted from his station. Captain, we have a problem. Something is activating around us. Elena looked at her displays and saw her worst nightmare coming true. Massive devices were powering up throughout the asteroid field. Gravity mines, sensor nets, and containment fields designed to catch any ship trying to escape. Admiral Zurgov had set a trap, and the Shadow's edge had flown right into it. Emergency phase out, Elena ordered. Sarah's hands flew over her controls. I am trying. Something is interfering with our phase systems. We are stuck halfway between dimensions. The ship shuddered as unknown forces grabbed at its hull. Elena could see Imperial vessels moving toward them from all directions. Destroyers, cruisers, and fighters swarmed out of hidden positions like angry hornets. Status report, Elena called. Phase drive is locked up, Sarah reported. We are partially phased, but not enough to become invisible. They can see us, but we cannot fully materialize or disappear. Weapons? Elena asked. Marcus checked his systems. Offline while we are in phase lock. If we want to fight, we need to drop into normal space completely. Elena made quick calculations in her head. 6 Imperial destroyers against 1 human scout. Ship was not good odds, even with their advanced technology. But being trapped between dimensions was worse than fighting in the open. Drop us into normal space, she ordered. Full materialization. Captain, are you sure? Sarah asked. Once we are fully real, we cannot phase out again until I fix the drive. Do it. The Shadow's edge solidified into normal space just as the Imperial fleet surrounded them. Elena looked at her screens and counted 18 ships pointing weapons at her vessel. It was the largest concentration of firepower she had ever seen in one place. Her communication system crackled to life. A deep, threatening voice spoke in the Imperial language, which her computer automatically translated. Unknown vessel, you are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Elena looked at her crew. Marcus was running weapon diagnostics. Sarah was already working on the phase drive repairs. Both of them were calm and professional, even facing impossible odds. This was why she was proud to serve with humans. When things got bad, they got creative. Marcus, how long do you need to map their fleet positions and communication networks? If I can access their systems directly? Maybe 20 minutes. But Captain, they are not going to give us 20 minutes. Sarah, can you plant monitoring devices in their computer networks if Marcus gets you access? Absolutely. I can install surveillance programs that will let us track their entire military for months. Elena smiled. Admiral Zurgov thought he had caught a spy in his trap. He had no idea that he was about to give the humans access to every secret the Empire had. Open a communication channel, Elena ordered. Captain, what are you doing? Marcus asked, something no Imperial commander will expect. I am going to talk to them. The communication channel opened, and Elena found herself looking at Admiral Zurgov's massive face on her screen. The Imperial commander looked confused and angry at the same time. Who are you? He demanded. What species do you represent? Elena put on her friendliest smile. Hello there. I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the human ship Shadow's Edge. Please do not be alarmed. We come in peace. Admiral Zurgov stared at her for several seconds. In 3 centuries of expansion, no enemy had ever responded to capture by introducing themselves politely. Most species either attacked immediately or begged for mercy. This small creature with strange pale skin and dark hair was doing neither. Human? Zurgov said. We have no record of any species called humans in our database. Oh, that makes sense, Elena said cheerfully. We have been very careful to stay hidden until now. But your empire has been expanding toward our space. So we decided it was time to introduce ourselves. While she talked, Elena was making subtle hand signals to her crew. Marcus began hacking into the Imperial communication networks. Sarah started preparing surveillance viruses to plant in their systems. You are spies, Admiral Zurgov accused. Well, yes, Elena admitted with a laugh, but friendly spies. We just wanted to learn about your civilization before making formal contact, You have a very impressive empire, by the way. Your technology is quite advanced. Admiral Zurgoth did not know what to make of this strange creature who acted like being captured was just a minor inconvenience, and while he tried to figure out what was happening, the humans were stealing every secret his empire had. Admiral Zurgoth stared at the human female on his screen and felt completely lost. In all his years of military service, he had never encountered anything like this situation. Enemy ships were supposed to fight or surrender. They were not supposed to chat like old friends. You seem confused, Captain Vasquez said with a warm smile. Is this your first time meeting humans? We probably do things differently than other species, you know. You are surrounded by 18 warships, Admiral Zurgoth said slowly. Your vessel is small and alone. Why are you not afraid? Elena laughed, and the sound was strange to Imperial ears. Oh, I am definitely nervous. But being afraid would not help right now. Besides, you seem like reasonable people. I am sure we can work something out. Behind the Admiral, Commander Thitsos whispered urgently in his ear. Sir, this behavior makes no sense. Either they are incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Neither option is good for us. Elena continued talking as if she had not heard the whispered conversation. Your ships are really impressive, by the way. Those destroyer-class vessels must pack serious firepower. And your formation shows excellent tactical thinking. You clearly know how to run a military operation. Admiral Zurgoth felt a strange warmth at the compliment, then immediately became suspicious. You are trying to distract us. Not at all, Elena said. I genuinely admire good craftsmanship when I see it. Your empire has obviously spent a lot of time perfecting its military technology. How long did it take you to develop those gravity mines? The design is really clever. While Elena kept the Admiral talking, Marcus worked frantically at his station. The Imperial communication networks were surprisingly easy to penetrate. The Kethmorans had focused so much on building powerful weapons that they had ignored computer security. Their military databases were protected by encryption that human technology could break in minutes. Captain, Marcus whispered, I am in their main communication grid. Sarah can start uploading now. Sarah's fingers danced across her keyboard as she planted surveillance programs throughout the Imperial network. Each program was designed to hide itself and report back to human intelligence. Within hours, every message sent by the Kethmoran military would be copied to human databases. Elena kept Admiral Zurgoth focused on her while her crew worked. I have to ask, how do you coordinate between so many different ship classes? The logistics must be incredible. Do you use a centralized command system or more of a distributed network? Why do you want to know? Zurgoth asked suspiciously. Professional curiosity, Elena said. I am a ship captain too, and I am always interested in how other militaries solve complex problems. Your fleet coordination is really smooth. Much better than some species we have encountered. The Admiral found himself oddly pleased by her praise. Most enemies either insulted the Empire or begged for mercy. This human seemed genuinely interested in their capabilities. We use a hierarchical command structure, he found himself saying. Each ship reports to a squadron leader who reports to a fleet commander who reports to sector command. That makes sense for maintaining discipline, Elena agreed. But how do you handle rapid response situations? Does information have to go all the way up the chain before decisions can be made? Admiral Zurgoth realized he was having a detailed conversation about Imperial military structure with a captured enemy agent. This was exactly the kind of information that spies wanted to learn. But the human seemed so friendly and interested that he started answering without thinking. Commander Thitsos grabbed his arm. Admiral, she is gathering intelligence. This entire conversation is an interrogation technique. Elena heard the whispered comment and smiled even brighter. Your intelligence officer is very sharp. Yes, I am learning about your military. But I am also sharing information about humans in return. Fair trade, right? What information? Zurgoth demanded. Well, you now know that humans exist, that we have advanced stealth technology, and that we are interested in peaceful contact. That is more than you knew an hour ago. Marcus gave Elena a thumbs up from his station. He had downloaded complete fleet positions for 12 Imperial sectors. Sarah had finished planting her surveillance programs and was now copying weapon specifications and strategic plans. Admiral, Elena said, I should probably mention that my government will be expecting me to report back soon. If I do not check in on schedule, they might assume something bad happened to me. Are you threatening us? Zurgoth asked. Not at all. Just letting you know the situation. Humans tend to be protective of their people. If they think I have been captured or hurt, they might overreact. Overreact how? Elena's smile became a little less friendly. Well, you have seen one human ship with basic stealth technology. I probably should not mention how many ships we have, or what our military capabilities really are. That might make you nervous. Admiral Zurgoth felt that cold feeling in his stomach again. This small human was implying that her people had military forces that could threaten the Empire. But she was saying it so casually that he could not tell if it was a bluff or a warning. How many ships do humans have? He asked. Enough, Elena said simply. The real question is whether we are going to be friends or enemies. I am hoping for friends. The galaxy is big enough for both our peoples. Sarah caught Elena's attention and nodded. All the surveillance programs were in place and already sending data back to human space. Marcus had completed his mapping of Imperial positions. The mission was a complete success. Admiral Zurgoth, Elena said, I think it is time for me to leave. This has been a very productive conversation. You are not going anywhere, the Admiral said firmly. You are our prisoner. Elena's smile became genuinely amused. Am I? Admiral Zurgoth stared at Captain Vasquez as she asked her simple question. Am I? The way she said it made him feel like he was missing something important. Something dangerous. You are surrounded by my entire fleet, he said firmly. Your ship is small and outnumbered. You cannot escape. Elena nodded thoughtfully. That does seem like a problem for me, does it not? Sarah, how are those repairs coming along? Almost finished, Captain, her engineer replied cheerfully. Just need another minute or two. Admiral Zurgoth felt confused again. Why would they discuss repairs openly where he could hear them? Unless they wanted him to know that their ship would soon be operational again. Even if you repair your vessel, he said, you cannot outrun 18 ships. Surrender now and you will be treated according to Imperial law. That is very kind of you, Elena said. But I think there might be a misunderstanding here. You see, Admiral, I did not come here to surrender. I came here to deliver a message. What message? Elena's friendly expression became more serious, but she still smiled. The message is simple. Your empire has been expanding toward human space for several months now. That expansion needs to stop. Admiral Zurgoth laughed, a deep rumbling sound that echoed through his command bridge. You are in no position to make demands, human. One small ship cannot threaten the Kethmoran Empire. You are absolutely right, Elena agreed. One small ship cannot threaten your empire. But Admiral, who said anything about one small ship? Before Zurgoth could respond, Elena made a small gesture with her hand. Marcus pressed a button at his station, and suddenly every screen on every Imperial ship went dark for exactly 3 seconds. When the displays came back online, Admiral Zurgoth saw something that made his blood freeze. His weapon systems were offline, all of them. 18 ships, hundreds of weapons, and not one of them would respond to commands. His tactical officer was pressing buttons frantically, but nothing happened. "What did you do?" Zurgoth demanded. "We had a nice long conversation," Elena said calmly. "During that conversation, my crew was able to access your communication networks. Sarah is very good with computers. She planted some programs in your systems. Impossible. Our networks are secure." "They were secure against other Imperial technology," Elena corrected. "But human computer systems work differently than yours. What seems impossible to you is just Tuesday afternoon for us." "Admiral." Zurgoth felt panic rising in his chest. His entire fleet was helpless. But he forced himself to stay calm. "This is a temporary setback. Our engineers will restore our systems." "Oh, they absolutely will," Elena agreed. "Probably within a few hours." Sarah made sure the programs would not cause permanent damage. "We are not here to destroy your ships, Admiral. We are here to make a point, which is, humans have capabilities that your empire does not understand. What you have seen today is a very small demonstration. One scout ship with basic equipment has disabled your entire fleet without firing a single shot. Imagine what our actual military could do if we decided you were a threat." Commander Thitsos whispered urgently to Admiral Zurgoth. "Sir, our long-range sensors are detecting multiple contacts. Large ships approaching fast." Elena heard the comment and nodded. "Right on time. Admiral, you might want to check your deep space monitors." Zurgoth switched to his long-range display and felt his world change completely. Dozens of massive energy signatures were approaching the system. Ships larger than anything in the Imperial fleet, moving faster than should be possible, appearing from empty space as if they had been invisible until now. "Stealth fleet?" he whispered. "Battle groups," Elena corrected. 3 full battle groups, to be exact. "They have been waiting just outside your sensor range while I delivered my message. Standard human protocol when making first contact with potentially hostile species." Admiral Zurgoth counted the approaching ships and realized he was looking at more firepower than most Imperial sectors possessed. And they had been hiding nearby the entire time, invisible to every sensor his fleet carried. "You planned this," he said. "Of course we planned this," Elena replied. "Humans have been watching your empire for months, Admiral. We know your fleet positions, your strategic plans, your military capabilities. We know everything about you, while you knew nothing about us. That is not an accident. What do you want?" Elena's expression became completely serious. "We want your empire to stop expanding toward human space. Draw a line at your current borders and stay behind it. In return, humans will not interfere with your operations in any other direction. And if we refuse, then those battle groups will establish a defensive perimeter that your empire will never be able to cross. Every ship that tries will simply disappear. Every military installation within 50 light-years of human space will go offline just like your fleet did today." Admiral Zurgoth studied the human captain's face and realized she was not bluffing. Everything she had said was true. Her people had superior technology, better intelligence, and military forces that could appear and disappear at will. "You could have destroyed us," he said quietly. "Yes," Elena agreed, "but destroying your fleet would have started a war. Wars are expensive and people get hurt. Much better to have a conversation like civilized beings." "This is not a conversation. This is a threat." "It is both," Elena said with her friendly smile returning. "The best diplomacy always is." Sarah called from her station. "Captain, phase drive repairs are complete. We can leave whenever you are ready." Elena stood up and straightened her uniform. "Admiral Zurgoth, it has been a pleasure meeting you. I hope our peoples can be friends in the future. But just remember what happened here today. The next human ship you encounter might not be as talkative as I am." The shadow's edge began to shimmer and fade as its phase drive activated. Admiral Zurgoth watched helplessly as the human vessel became transparent and then vanished completely. His communication officer spoke quietly. "Sir, the unknown ships are also disappearing. Long-range sensors show them phasing out of normal space." Admiral Zurgoth sat in his command chair and stared at empty space. In less than an hour, everything he thought he knew about Imperial power had been proven wrong. Somewhere in the galaxy was a species that could appear and disappear at will, disable entire fleets without firing a shot, and had been watching the Empire's every move. The unknown ship had appeared and vanished. But now Admiral Zurgoth knew exactly what had hit them, and he knew the Empire would never dare to find out what else humans were capable of.